Resourceful Designer, episode 172, Impostor Syndrome.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host, he has trouble reading his own handwriting, Mark DeCote.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. In this episode, I want to talk to you about something that you may have experienced in your design career. Maybe you're experiencing it right now, and that's imposter syndrome. I'm also going to share a resource of the week to speed up your logo design process, or ending with a question from Tracy about separating life from work. Now, I want to start off by thanking everyone who has taken the time to help nominate Resourceful Designer for a podcast award. I mentioned last episode that I'm up again this year for the award, but I need your nominations to make it onto the final ballot. So if you enjoy the podcast and you would like to help me out, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/podcast awards and select Resourceful Designer in the arts category. Well, it's been a fun week for me. I completed a poster for an event, and now I'm incorporating the poster ideas into a whole bunch of ads to go in magazines and newspapers to promote this event that's going to be happening later this year in our area. Now, this is a long-standing client. I've done this every year, and it's always fun because once the poster is approved, the ads, I kind of have whatever leeway I want. As long as the information from the poster shows up on the ads, I can design them any way I want. I'm just given the restrictions of the size of the ad, and then they let me do it. So it's always a fun project to do. I still don't know at this point how many ads I'm going to do. It depends on their budget for placement. They will let me know as they go, but they're kind of trickling in. So I'll get an email and say, Mark, this week we need 5 ads for these newspapers and magazines. And then the next week there might be some more. So it's a little fun in that way. It's a little different. Although I can tell you from past experience, as the weeks go on and we get closer to the event, it tends to get a little bit boring because it is the same ad I'm doing over and over, just resizing it, shuffling things around, deciding what can appear depending on the size of the ad. Because if it's like a full-page newspaper ad, I could put a lot of information. But if it's a quarter-size ad, some of the information has to come out. And anyways, you get the idea. I'm also excited to start working on a new website. This is actually an old high school friend of mine. Somebody I knew way back in the day in high school contacted me and said, Mark, are you still doing websites? And I said, I sure am. So they said, well, our company here is in desperate need of a new website. The one they had was very, very old. And reached out to me. Everything went fine. They signed the contract. I just received the deposit check. And now we're in the stage where we're talking about content and what sort of things they want with the website. So that looks like a very fun project I'm going to start on soon. So those are a few of the things that I've been up to this week. Now, before I go any further, I want to welcome SmartPress as a sponsor of the Resourceful Designer podcast. And that's smartpress.com. Now, SmartPress is an employee-owned, premium online printing company with a mission to enable creative professionals like you and I to create brilliant printing pieces. I asked them to send me some printed samples so I can have a look. When I got this box of samples from SmartPress, let me tell you, I was very impressed with what I saw. Most online printers are very limited in what you can do. They basically say, this is what we do, and you design to it. Well, what's great about SmartPress is it's just like dealing with a local printer. You're not limited by quantities or sizes. You can have something designed to your specifications. It's just like dealing with a local printer, except it's online. I'm looking right now at a sample paper book that they sent me along with their print samples, and they have such a wide variety of papers that you can choose from, including different colors. They have linen finishes, felt finishes. Now, SmartPress does have a special offer for you. If you want to get a free paper sample book, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/smartpress and request yours. Thank you, SmartPress, for being a sponsor of Resourceful Designer. And now, this week's resource of the week. Now, this week's resource is the Logo Package Express. I know I shared this not too long ago when it was originally launched, but I just want to mention it again. I've used it since the launch. Actually, I had the demo version or the beta beforehand, and I really liked it. But this newer version that came out, I've used it numerous times on logos I've designed, and it is so easy to use. Literally in 2 or 3 minutes, you can take a logo that you've designed and package it up into dozens and dozens of files to provide to your client with everything they need for print, for digital, in color, in black and white, in reverse. It is so easy. So if you do design logos, even if it's just from time to time, and you do it in Adobe Illustrator, and this has to be Adobe Illustrator Creative Cloud, if you do use Adobe Illustrator to design logos, I highly suggest you check out Logo Package Express. Now, if you want to know more about it, I did record a demo of me working through it, showing you how it works. And you can see that demo by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/the-logo-package-demo. I've only had it for a short time, and I can already tell you that I have saved myself hundreds of dollars in design hours that I did not have to spend saving and organizing these logos. What would have taken me hours and hours and hours to do, I had done in a matter of minutes. So once again, if you want to see my demo video and learn more about the Logo Package Express, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/the-logo-package-demo. And now, Imposter Syndrome. Back in episode 4 of the podcast, way back when I first started, I talked about superhero syndrome. And that's where someone takes on more responsibilities than they need to, or really that they should be taking on. Sometimes doing things that they're not even qualified to do, instead of doing the logical thing and find someone who is qualified for the task. Well, in today's episode, I want to talk about the opposite of superhero syndrome, and that's imposter syndrome. Now, in case you're not familiar, imposter syndrome can be defined as, well, it's a collection of feelings of inadequacy, feelings that persist even in the face of information that indicates that the complete opposite is true. It's experienced internally as a chronic self-doubt or a feeling of intellectual fraudulence. In layman's terms, it's the belief that you're an imposter and not qualified to do the things that you're asked to do, even though you are qualified. Several years ago, I actually talked about imposter syndrome on an episode of Stuff I Learned Yesterday, which was another podcast I did before Resourceful Designer. And I was one of the weekly hosts for that podcast, and I talked about imposter syndrome. Now, that was the first time I had actually heard of this, and I had to do a lot of research before doing that episode. But since then, the term, and unfortunately, the suffering, has become more popular or more widely known. But even though I've done an episode on this before in another podcast, before choosing it for today's topic, I decided to do a little bit more research into the subject. And after reading several articles and several blogs about imposter syndrome, I've come to really one conclusion. Imposter syndrome is BS. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the syndrome is. The syndrome is very, very real. And I believe that many people suffer from it. Heck, even I do. I release a new podcast episode every week. I do this to help you with your design business. But there are plenty of times when I think to myself, who am I to be advising these people? Why should anyone listen to me? I'm no superstar designer. I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers like people like Chris Do does. Well, that's imposter syndrome creeping in on me. And even though I know what it is, the feeling's still there. It's normal. We all suffer from it at some point, especially designers. You and I, we're expected to create things from nothing. We create them using only our creativity, our imagination. Businesses or clients stake their growth on what we come up with. That is a daunting task. And what if somebody found out we're not actually up to the challenge? That's what I'm calling BS on. It's the view that people suffering from imposter syndrome have about themselves, thinking they're not good enough. Am I the most qualified person to talk about the 170 plus topics that I've shared on the podcast with you over the last few years? No, of course not. There are plenty of designers more qualified than me. But that doesn't mean I'm not qualified in my own way. I have over 30 years of design experience. 14 of those spent running my own design business. Everything I've learned over that time and everything I'm still learning today. All of that is what I'm sharing with you. And in my opinion, there's nobody better to share my experiences than me. I've put in my time, and I'm the designer and the person I am today because of that time I put in. So when I start feeling imposter syndrome, I need to remind myself that you're there, you're listening. You've decided to listen to me and to my podcasts because you want to. You've determined that I'm worth listening to. And that's what gets me through that imposter syndrome. But what about you? Do you ever feel like you're a fraud, an imposter, not qualified to do what's being asked of you? Well, let me tell you something. If you are at the point in your design career where you're working or thinking of working with clients, then trust me, you've earned that right. Chances are, if you were not ready to work with clients, there's no way you would be trying to do it. It's a common belief amongst imposter syndrome sufferers that they only got to where they are by pure luck or by somehow deceiving others into thinking that they're more skilled and competent than they believe themselves to be, no matter the evidence of their competence. Those with imposter syndrome remain convinced that they're frauds and don't deserve the success they have. Again, BS. I don't want to sound mean or come off as impassive. What I'm trying to say is, unless you're trying to pass yourself off as a designer, having never designed anything before, then you're not an imposter. An imposter would be someone offering to design a website having never seen WordPress or HTML or anything before, or someone offering to design a logo without any knowledge of what a logo actually is. I'm betting that you got to where you are in your design career right now because you deserve to be there, wherever there is. Whether you're a student, a new designer, or a veteran. And I believe that a lot of designers should have more confidence in their own abilities than they actually do. It's that self-doubt that gets to them. What you need to remember is that you've earned that degree, the one that says you are a designer. When you were in school, you did the same projects and took the same exams and tests as those around you. Sure, maybe some of your classmates may have done better than you did, but that doesn't mean you didn't earn your passing grade. Now, if you didn't go to school for design, then chances are you've spent time honing your skills and learning the necessary programs and techniques to be the designer you want to be. Don't think for 1 second that just because you didn't attend design school, that you're not a designer. There are plenty of super successful designers out there that never went to school. The same goes for your career. If you're working somewhere as a designer, you were hired for that design position because you were the best candidate. Nobody hires a designer out of pity. They hire a designer because they see the traits, they see the skills, and they see the quality in them that they're looking for. You are being given the projects that you are given, or you are being hired by the clients because you have proved yourself to be the person they need. And as long as you can continue to learn, continue to push yourself, you can never call yourself a fraud. Are there people better qualified than you? I can almost guarantee that there are. But that doesn't mean you yourself are not qualified. Think of it this way. If you've got a team, a sports team, not every player on that team can be the star player. But everyone on that team made it there on their own merits. So stop looking at other people's success and keep working on developing your best self. Imposter syndrome it's not a mental disorder, nor is it a personality trait. It's only a reaction to certain stimuli and events, and imposter syndrome can be overcome. It was Henry Ford that said, "Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right." Think about that. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So what you have to do is think that you can. And if you're thinking, well, I think I can, but I'm not sure if I'm capable. I'm not sure if I have the skills. I'm not sure if I'm qualified. Well, let me ask you, you've heard the term fake it until you make it? Well, that term applies to just about every designer who's ever lived. The only way to get to a level of competence is by trying. And a lot of that will come from failure. When you design a logo or any piece, it's not the very first image or design that you come up with that is usually the good one, the one that's approved by the client. You may go through dozens or hundreds of iterations before coming up with that final piece. It's called progress. It's called practice. It's faking it until you make it. Even the best designers in the world keep learning and keep improving themselves because they know they can be better than they currently are. They keep learning because in their mind, they're not good enough. I know that's the reason why I keep learning. I know I'm a good designer. I won't call myself a superstar or amazing designer, but I think I'm a good designer. But that means that there's lots of room for improvement. So I keep learning because I'm not the designer that I hope to be. And in reality, I don't think I ever will be. In fact, I hope I never am the designer I hope to be. Because the day I become that designer is the day I will stop striving to improve and to learn and to become better. And I never want that to happen. And that's okay. Regardless of where you are in your career or your skills or your knowledge or your abilities, you just need to get out there. You need to do your best. You need to keep learning, and you'll be okay. There's nothing fraudulent about it. Now, if you do suffer from imposter syndrome and you're listening and you're saying, well, this is great, Mark, but still I feel it, here's something you can try. There's a common therapy that I found in several of the articles that I read that says keeping a journal of your accomplishments can help you associate them with reality. In other words, keeping track of those accomplishments can alleviate your sense of inadequacy. Keeping all those emails that you get that say, good job, or this design is amazing, or we love it. Keeping those emails will make you feel good. They make great testimonials for your website and promotional material, by the way, but they will act as a reminder that you're good at what you do. I have a special mailbox in my email program here on my computer where I keep all the emails that I've received thanking me for doing this podcast. Some of them are simple, some of them are very long, detailed emails telling me how I've helped them. I received a message on LinkedIn this morning from somebody thanking me for inspiring them to start their own business. And after a certain amount of time, they said they finally got to the point where they quit their day job and they're taking their design business full time. Well, I keep all of these things and I go back and I reread them from time to time. Or I'll read the iTunes reviews that I get for the podcast. These are all from people that are letting me know that they appreciate what it is that I do and reminding me that I'm not a fraud. I may not be the best designer out there. I may not be the best business owner out there, but that doesn't mean I'm not qualified to share my knowledge and my experience with you over the podcast or the blog or whatever. Now, another thing you can do if you do feel like you're suffering from imposter syndrome is find people to talk to. Especially other designers. Designers will understand where you're coming from. So find other designers to talk to. Now, if you are not sure or you don't have any colleagues or anything or friends that you can talk to, find a group, maybe a Facebook group, or better yet, join the Resourceful Designer community. Everybody in there is somebody that is trying to strive to become better. They're trying to grow their business, grow themselves as designers. And it is a great place to help build confidence in yourself. So if you're interested, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community and give it a try. Trust me, you're not alone. And that's one of the problems, is people that suffer from imposter syndrome think that they're the only ones. Well, I want to share a few things that I found out as I was doing my research. I came across quite a few famous people that suffer from imposter syndrome. Actress and comedian Tina Fey often feels that people will realize she's not that funny. Michelle Pfeiffer is constantly afraid that people will find out she's not very talented. Kate Winslet wakes up some morning thinking, I can't do this, I'm a fraud. Even Tom Hanks suffers from imposter syndrome. In an interview, he said, I still feel sometimes that I'd like to be as good as so-and-so an actor. I see other actors work and I think, I'll never get there. I wish I could. Sure, all these examples I used are actors, but I wanted to share them because these are people that we know. We've heard them, we've seen them, we have our opinions of them. But regardless of what we think of them, their abilities and their skills as actors, we know that they made it to this point because of their hard work and their effort, and they deserve to be wherever they are. Even someone as talented as Tom Hanks, who is recognized as one of the top actors in Hollywood, sometimes thinks he's not good enough. And yet he has the awards to prove otherwise. Now, you may not be as famous as these people, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve to be where you are. If you feel this way about yourself, if you think you may be suffering from imposter syndrome, let me tell you this. You've played the major role in your success. It wasn't those around you, so stop comparing yourself to them. Nobody belongs where you are more than you do. And that means you've earned your position. You are not a fraud. You didn't get to where you are by luck. Your accomplishments are yours and yours alone. Nobody promotes you, nobody hires you, nobody encourages you out of pity. They do so because you have the ability and you deserve to be there. If you can realize this, then there's no telling what you can achieve. So don't hold back. If you do, you're only robbing the world of the value that you yourself can bring. And that's what I wanted to say about imposter syndrome. Now, I would love to know, do you suffer from imposter syndrome? And if so, what do you do to get past it? Leave a comment for this episode at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 172. And now this week's question of the week. This week's question comes in from Tracy, and it's simply, how do you separate life and work? Well, thank you for the question, Tracy. And the easiest answer to give is I have parameters. I separate life from work by setting boundaries. I work from 9 to 5. Now, I know a lot of designers are saying, wow, I wish I can do that or that. It was something when I started my business, I told my wife that it would not interfere with our home life. The kids were young, they were here. I said it would not interfere. I would run my business just like it was any other job that I was going to. I've never considered myself a freelancer. Maybe freelancers are a little bit more open with when and how they work. I have always said that I am running a design business, and my design business is open from 9 to 5. And that means that I sit down at 9 o'clock and I work throughout the day, and at 5 o'clock, I'm out of here. Now, yes, there have been exceptions if there was a very tight deadline or something, or maybe from time to time, if my wife falls asleep early and I'm not tired, I'll come and do a little bit of work late at night. But for the most part, at 5 o'clock, I get up, I go have supper, and then I spend the evening with my wife and my kids when they were here and do other stuff. And I found that so freeing and liberating. It was the easiest thing to do to separate life and work. And I know I've talked to other designers over the years, and they say, well, I can't do that. I mean, my clients need stuff and that. Well, the thing is you got to set these boundaries. My clients know that I will not answer my phone after 5 p.m. They know I will not respond to an email after 5 p.m. because I have told them that. It's been like that since the start, and the clients will respect it. What starts to happen if you don't set these sort of boundaries is clients will come to expect you to be on call. They will expect you to be working late at night. When they have an idea, they'll expect to be able to talk to you. And what happens in those situations is the relationship between you and your client becomes one of you working for the client. The client is expecting you to be there just like they would expect any of their employees to be available. But when you're running a design business, You don't work for your client. You're working with your client. When you have that mentality that you are working with them, you're partnering with them, you're equal to them, it is so much easier to set some sort of boundary on what they can and can't do. And some clients, yes, I'll admit it's harder to do for. Some of them try and they keep going and trying to reach out to you, but after a while, they'll learn that that's not the way you do things. And you got to stick to your guns. You've got to follow through with what you say, with that commitment. And if you do so, it will help you separate life and work. Now, that doesn't mean to say that while I'm out and about, I'm not thinking of stuff. There's times when my wife would be thinking or talking to me, and she'll say, Mark, are you even listening to me? And I'll say, sorry, I've got this website or this logo or something, and I was just running through it in my head. Because I'll often do that. I'll design stuff in my head when I'm not at my computer. And I don't like doing that, but it does happen from time to time. But I am still physically with my wife or my kids and that. And it's not like it happens an awful lot, but it does happen. So that's probably the best answer I can give you, Tracy, is set parameters, set boundaries, and stick to them. And remember that it's so much easier to do when you're working with a client as opposed to for a client. So thank you very much for the question. I do appreciate it. Now, if you have a question you'd like me to answer in a future episode of the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and submit yours. Now, can I ask you a favor? If you're enjoying the podcast, can you please share it with your design friends? Let them know about the show. It's available everywhere podcasts can be found, including on Spotify, iHeartRadio, now on Pandora, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and so much more, including the iOS and Android apps that can be downloaded. So if you happen to be talking to any designers anywhere, let them know about the podcast and let them know what you like about it. Now, I want to remind you one more time about SmartPress. Take advantage of their offer to send you a free paper sample book. You can get to it by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/smartpress. I think you'll be very impressed with the samples they send you, and look through their website at smartpress.com and see if they're a good fit for you. So that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.